The apartheid era in South Africa, spanning from 1948 to the early 1990s, was a period characterized by institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination. Under apartheid, the South African government enforced policies that systematically oppressed and marginalized the non-white population, particularly the majority black population. Let's delve into the history, key features, impact, and eventual end of the apartheid system in South Africa. Origins and implementation. A. National Party rule. In 1948, the National Party came to power in South Africa and implemented a policy of apartheid, which means apartness, or separateness, in Afrikaans. B. Legislative framework. Apartheid laws were enacted to establish and maintain racial separation, codifying segregation in all aspects of life, including housing, education, employment, and public services. C. Population classification. The Population Registration Act classified South Africans into racial categories, primarily black, colored, Indian, and white, determining their rights and privileges. Key features of apartheid. A. Racial segregation. Apartheid enforced strict geographic and social separation between racial groups, with designated areas and infrastructure for each racial category. B. Pass laws. Pass laws restricted the movement of non-white individuals, requiring them to carry identification documents known as passes, which controlled their access to certain areas. C. Bantu education. The Bantu Education Act provided separate and inferior education for non-white students, aiming to limit their opportunities and perpetuate inequality. D. Forced removals. The government forcibly relocated non-white communities, particularly black Africans, from urban areas to designated townships and homelands, often disrupting families and communities. Resistance and struggle. A. Nonviolent resistance. Activists such as Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, and Desmond Tutu emerged as key figures in the anti-apartheid movement, advocating for equality, human rights, and justice through nonviolent means. B. Mass protests. The Sharpeville massacre in 1960, where police killed peaceful protesters, and the Soweto uprising in 1976, sparked widespread protests and international condemnation of apartheid policies. C. International pressure. The international community increasingly denounced apartheid, imposing economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation on South Africa. Transition to democracy. A. Negotiations and reforms. In the late 1980s, the South African government, under President F.W. de Klerk, initiated negotiations with anti-apartheid organizations, eventually leading to the dismantling of apartheid laws and the release of political prisoners, including Nelson Mandela. B. The end of apartheid. In 1994, South Africa held its first non-racial democratic elections, with Nelson Mandela becoming the country's first black president, marking the official end of apartheid. Legacy and reconciliation. A. Truth and reconciliation. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was established to investigate human rights abuses committed during the apartheid era, providing a platform for victims and perpetrators to share their experiences. B. Healing and reconstruction. South Africa continues to grapple with the legacy of apartheid, focusing on reconciliation, social justice, and addressing the socioeconomic disparities inherited from the apartheid system.